The myth versus reality. They told you entrepreneurship was freedom. They told you it was the dream, the escape from 9 to 5, the road to success, the life where you call the shots. And maybe that's what got you here. The fantasy of owning your time, building your empire, being your own boss. But nobody told you that freedom comes with chains. Chains made of responsibility, debt, expectation, fear. Every morning you wake up and check your phone, not because you want to, but because you're terrified of what message might be waiting. A missed payment, a client backing out, another fire to put out before breakfast. People think you're lucky. They see the highlight reel, the product launch, the new office, the big post that says, "We did it." But what they don't see is the 3 a.m. panic attacks, the nights you stare at your ceiling wondering if this whole thing was a mistake. They don't see the fight you have with your own reflection, asking if you're enough, if you're really built for this. Entrepreneurship looks glamorous from the outside. On social media, it's beaches, laptops, and inspirational quotes. But the truth, most days it feels like you're drowning while trying to convince everyone you're fine. You post success because people expect it. You smile on video calls because your team needs hope. You pretend to be confident because investors won't back uncertainty. But deep inside, you know you're still figuring it out. Every decision feels like a gamble with your future. Every mistake feels like a scar you can't afford to show. They said, be your own boss. But they never said the boss doesn't get to clock out. They never said the boss doesn't sleep. They never said the boss eats last, if there's anything left. This is the part of entrepreneurship nobody talks about. The silence between the success posts. The anxiety before the client call. The guilt of missing birthdays because you're building something no one else understands. The unspoken truth. Sometimes, being a founder means feeling like a failure in private while performing confidence in public. The isolation phase. When you start your first business, everyone cheers you on. Friends say, "That's amazing." Family says, "We're proud of you." You get flooded with congratulations, emojis, handshakes, and promises of support. It feels like the world is rooting for you. But then the weeks turn into months. The excitement fades. People stop checking in. They stop asking how it's going. And if they do, you can see it in their eyes. That quiet doubt that says, maybe it's not working. You start missing out on things. Birthdays, dinners, group chats. Not because you don't care, but because you're too tired, too broke, too buried in work to show up. You tell yourself, this is temporary. But temporary starts to stretch into years. Your friends don't get it anymore. They talk about weekends, promotions, travel. You talk about invoices, deadlines, and churn rates. You're not living the same life anymore. You've crossed a line they can't see. And that's when it hits you. Entrepreneurship is a lonely road. It's not just about working alone. It's about thinking alone. Carrying a vision in your head that nobody else fully understands. You can explain it 1,000 times, but no one will ever feel it the way you do. Family starts to worry. They ask, when will you get a real job again? They don't mean harm. They just want you to be safe. But safe isn't why you started this. Safe never built anything legendary. So you stop talking about your struggles, because explaining feels pointless. You start to wear the mask, the one that says, everything's fine. You post progress updates even when you're burning inside. Because the world loves winners, not warriors in the middle of the battle. You start losing connections one by one, not out of anger, just distance. People drift toward comfort. You drift toward chaos. You live in two different worlds now. You're fighting for something that doesn't exist yet. And that's a fight most people don't understand. There's a quiet type of loneliness that comes with building something from nothing. It's not the loneliness of being alone in a room. It's the loneliness of being surrounded by people who don't see what you see. But maybe that's the price of vision. Maybe that's the toll of dreaming at a level that reality hasn't caught up to yet. You're walking through fog, guided only by the faint light of faith. And until that light becomes real, until the world finally believes, you walk alone. The emotional debt. They tell you to take risks. They tell you to hustle. They tell you that failure is part of the process. What they don't tell you is that every risk costs a piece of your peace. Every time you promise a client, every time you reassure your team, every time you smile when you're scared to death, you spend a little more of yourself. That's the emotional debt founders rack up without noticing. It doesn't show up on your balance sheet, but it compounds daily. At first it's small, a skipped meal, a sleepless night. Then it grows. You start dreaming about emails. You wake up already tired. You forget what silence sounds like. You keep telling yourself, once we hit this target, once we raise that round, once we launch this product, then I'll rest. But that day never comes, because entrepreneurship isn't a marathon. It's a treadmill with no stop button. And so you push. You smile in meetings while your stomach twists. You joke with your team while your chest feels heavy. You tell your family, it's just a busy week, even though every week feels like this. No one prepares you for the guilt that comes with chasing a dream. The guilt of missing your kid's school play. The guilt of watching your parents grow older while you're still building the future. The guilt of wondering if all this sacrifice is actually selfish. Because while the world calls you brave, you sometimes feel like a fraud, a reckless gambler betting everyone's faith on a vision that still only exists in your head. There are nights you cry quietly, not because something went wrong, but because you're too tired to keep pretending you're okay. You scroll through social media and see everyone else crushing it. You know it's an illusion, but it still hurts. Depression doesn't always look like lying in bed. Sometimes it looks like sitting in front of spreadsheets at 2 a.m., trying to convince yourself this stress is normal. Sometimes it's snapping at your team because you haven't eaten all day. Sometimes it's looking in the mirror, not recognizing the person staring back. But here's what nobody tells you. That emotional debt is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign that you care. You care enough to carry weight most people will never understand. And yes, the bill always comes due. It comes in exhaustion, in doubt, in tears. But if you learn to face it, to pause, to breathe, to admit that you're human, you can start paying it down, bit by bit, moment by moment. You start learning that strength isn't pretending you're bulletproof. Strength is saying, this hurts, and still showing up anyway. Every founder eventually learns this. The business will take everything you give it. It's your job to keep something for yourself, because the company can survive a lost client or a bad quarter. But it can't survive if you do. The fear that never leaves you. Thought once you launched your business, the fear would fade. You thought once the idea turned into something real, the anxiety would ease. But that's not how it works, because launching isn't the end. It's the beginning of a new kind of fear. It starts quietly. Maybe you notice it when you wake up one morning and your pulse is already racing. You check your inbox before opening your eyes. You scroll through metrics. You check your bank balance. You imagine the moment when everything goes wrong. The client who leaves, the server crash, the lawsuit you forgot about. And the worst part? You know it's not paranoia, it's responsibility. When you're an entrepreneur, you don't just answer for yourself. You answer for your team. You answer for your customers. You answer for the bills you promised to your suppliers. You answer for the hope you sold to your partner when you said, we're doing this together. That responsibility, when you feel it deeply, becomes a constant companion. It doesn't leave when you close your laptop. It doesn't wait until Monday morning. It follows you into your dreams. It sits beside you at dinner. And then there's the fear of failure. Not failure as in, I didn't make it. But failure as in, I dragged others down with me. Because your vision didn't just belong to you anymore. You start asking questions like, what if the money runs out? What if the product fails? What if someone else does it better? What if I disappoint the people who believed in me? These questions don't wait for permission. They don't knock politely. They invade your mind at 2 a.m. when you're half asleep, and suddenly you're wide awake, tracing timelines of what could go wrong. And with this fear comes a strange silence. You don't talk about it because you think you should already be past it. You don't admit it because you're supposed to be the leader, so you carry it alone. But here's the truth. Fear doesn't mean you're unqualified. It means you're human. The founders who succeed don't ignore the fear. They work with it. They accept it. They know it will never fully leave, but they refuse to let it dominate the journey. Because the thing about fear is this. It's not the opposite of courage. It's part of it. Courage is walking forward with fear, taking the step even though your legs are shaking, speaking the words even though your throat is dry, launching the product even though you imagine how it could end. So yes, the fear never leaves, but your relationship to it changes. You stop running from it. You stop hiding it. You start owning it. And when you own it, fear becomes fuel, not something that paralyzes you, but something that energizes you. Because you know what's at stake. You know what it means, and you're willing to keep going anyway. That's when you move from being afraid of failing to being afraid of not trying. The breaking point. At some point, every founder hits it. The wall. That invisible line between working hard and being consumed. It doesn't happen all at once. It creeps in slowly, like a fog. You start noticing it in small ways. You forget simple things. You stop feeling excited when something goes right. You catch yourself staring at the screen, not because you're thinking, but because you've run out of thoughts. And then one day, you realize the thing that used to make you come alive is now draining the life out of you. You tell yourself it's just a bad week. You double down. You drink more coffee, sleep less, push harder. You think you can outwork the exhaustion, but you can't. You can't out-hustle emptiness. Because burnout isn't just being tired. It's when your purpose starts slipping through your fingers and you're too numb to notice. This is the breaking point, the place where passion turns into pressure, where I love this turns into I have to. And once you cross that line, you start losing yourself. The irony is, people around you will still call you successful. They'll see the milestones, the new clients, the small wins. They won't see the quiet panic inside, the one that whispers, I can't keep this up. And you start bargaining with yourself. Just one more launch, just one more month, just one more round. Deep down, you know something's breaking. And if you don't stop, it's not just the company that's going to collapse. Founders rarely talk about this part because it feels like betrayal, like admitting weakness to the dream you fought so hard for. You can't tell your team you're falling apart. You can't tell investors you're scared. You can't tell your family because they already worry. So you suffer in silence. You tell the world you're fine while privately wondering if you're even built for this. You question everything, your competence, your idea, your worth. And somewhere in that chaos, a thought you never imagined starts to form. Maybe I should quit. That's the moment that terrifies every entrepreneur. Not because quitting means failure, but because you've tied your identity to what you built. If the business dies, who are you then? That's the real breaking point. When you realize you've given so much of yourself that you don't know where the business ends and you begin. But here's the truth. Every founder faces this. Every builder reaches a point where they need to break to rebuild. Sometimes, the crash isn't the end. It's the reset. Because burnout isn't a sign you're weak. It's a signal that something sacred in you needs attention. And And if you listen, if you slow down instead of speeding up, you'll find that the fire doesn't die. It changes, it softens, it starts burning in a healthier way. So if you're there right now, exhausted, scared, and ready to give up, remember this: the greatest founders didn't survive because they never broke. They survived because they learned how to heal. The rebirth. When everything collapses, something strange happens. At first, you feel empty, like the fight was for nothing. But in that silence, after the noise fades, after the rush dies down, something inside you begins to whisper again. It's not ambition this time, not the hunger to win. It's quieter, simpler, real. It's the same voice that spoke the first day you dreamed of building something, before the investors, before the expectations, before the pressure. The voice that said, you can create something that matters. That's the rebirth, the moment when you stop chasing success and start chasing meaning again. You start seeing things differently. You realize that maybe you weren't failing, you were evolving, that breaking wasn't the end. It was the shedding of everything fake, the pride, the ego, the illusion that you had to be invincible. You stop trying to prove something to the world. You start trying to build something true. And in that simplicity, peace starts to return. Not the fake kind that comes from a motivational quote or a weekend off, but the kind that comes from knowing who you are without your title, your startup, or your revenue. You wake up not to impress the world, but to honor your craft again. Slowly the spark returns, not the chaotic fire that once burned you out, but a steady flame, controlled, focused, kind. You learn that leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about having the courage to walk even when you don't. You begin building again, but this time, differently. You design your business around life, not the other way around. You give yourself permission to rest, to breathe, to celebrate small wins. You stop measuring success by growth charts and start measuring it by peace. Because the dark side of entrepreneurship was never just about failure. It was about forgetting yourself. And the rebirth is about remembering who you were before the world told you who you had to be. That's when you realize maybe this journey was never about creating a company. Maybe it was about creating you. Because real entrepreneurship isn't about building something that lasts forever. It's about becoming someone who can rebuild no matter what breaks. The lessons nobody teaches. The world celebrates the success story, but it rarely tells you what comes after survival. Nobody teaches you how to rebuild your spirit after burnout. Nobody teaches you how to lead when you've lost faith in yourself. Nobody teaches you how to love your business again after it almost destroyed you. But these are the lessons that matter. Success without peace is still failure. You can hit every target, break every record, and still feel empty. Because peace isn't found in achievement, it's found in alignment. If what you're building costs your mental health, your relationships, your soul, it's not success. It's a slow suicide dressed up as ambition. So before you chase more, ask yourself, what is enough? Real winners know when to stop sprinting and start sustaining. Momentum is built on recovery. Every athlete rests, every soldier recharges, every founder must do the same. The world tells you to never stop grinding. But if you never stop, you'll grind yourself into dust. Momentum doesn't come from doing more, it comes from doing better, from choosing the right moves instead of every move. Take rest seriously, schedule silence, protect your energy like it's your capital, because it is. Vulnerability builds stronger teams. We were taught that leaders must always look confident, always composed, but that's a lie. The best founders don't lead with perfection, they lead with honesty. When you open up about the struggles, your team stops seeing you as a distant boss. They see you as human, and that creates loyalty, trust, and love, the real currency of startups. You don't need to have all the answers. You just need to have the courage to say, I don't, but we'll figure it out together. Your business is not your identity. You are not your revenue. You are not your company. You are a creator, and your worth doesn't vanish if your product fails. Detach your identity from outcomes. When you do, you free yourself from fear. You start taking smarter risks. You become more creative because you're no longer building from ego, but from curiosity. The goal isn't to protect your image, it's to protect your fire. Choose purpose over pressure. When you forget your why, everything becomes heavier. But when you remember why you started, every obstacle becomes lighter. Purpose doesn't remove pain. It gives pain meaning. And that meaning is what carries you through the dark nights. So write down your purpose. Keep it where you can see it. Let it remind you that what you're building is bigger than metrics. It's legacy. Build slow to last long. Everyone wants to go viral, raise fast, scale overnight. But real foundations are built brick by brick. Build something that lasts by building with patience, ethics, and heart. Fast growth might look impressive, but sustainable growth feels peaceful. Choose peace. These are the lessons nobody teaches, the truths you only learn when you've fallen, broken, and stood back up. And if you've reached this point, if you're still here, still dreaming, still building, that means you've already won. Because the dark side of entrepreneurship isn't meant to destroy you. It's meant to reveal who you are when everything else is stripped away. And who you are after the fire is unstoppable. The dark side of entrepreneurship and why it's worth walking through. The Founder's Creed. This is your life now. Not a 9-to-5, not a safe path, not a script someone else wrote for you. You are a founder. You are a creator. You are someone willing to walk through fire for a vision others cannot yet see. And yes, the road is dark. Yes, the nights are long. Yes, fear, doubt, and exhaustion will try to break you. But they will not define you. So here is your creed, spoken silently in your mind every morning, in every quiet moment, in every sleepless night. I will rise before the world demands it. I will work when my body says no. I will make mistakes, and I will learn from them. I will feel fear, and I will move through it. I will carry responsibility, and I will not let it crush me. I will cry when I must, and I will fight when I can. I will fail, but I will never surrender. I will build with purpose, with honesty, and with heart. I will honor myself in the process, because I am the foundation of my vision. The dark side of entrepreneurship. It's real, it's brutal. It will test every fiber of your being, but it is not your enemy. It is your teacher, your mentor, your forge, your proving ground. Walk through it with eyes wide open. Carry it like armor, not chains. Let it shape you, not break you. And when the world doubts you, when your friends drift, when the money runs low, when the client leaves, when the rejection lands, remember this: you are not weak, you are not lost, you are a founder. And founders do not quit. Founders adapt. Founders endure. Founders rise. So take the darkness, face it, own it, walk through it. And when you emerge, you will not only have survived, you will have been forged into someone unstoppable. This is the truth nobody talks about. This is the dark side of entrepreneurship, and this is why it's worth it. Survive the darkness, build the future, be the founder you were born to be.